Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me so much pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of India Habitat Center and Professor Benoy K Behl. Today's talk is the 31st in his monthly series, Glimpses of Culture. 28 years ago, when the holy relics of Lord Buddha were sent by the government of India to Thailand for exposition, Professor Behl was asked to produce a photographic exhibition on Buddhist heritage, which was sent along with the holy relics. Now that the revered relics are being sent once again to Thailand, Professor Behl's film on Buddhism in India and Southeast Asia is being screened in Bangkok by the Government of India as part of the occasion. Professor Behl's greatest contribution is providing us a wide perspective in which the cultural connections between the Asian countries become visible. We are able to trace and see the roots of an ancient culture from its beginnings. In the last few months, he has taken us to the earliest Indian art in the Indus Valley and the Maurya periods. He also took us to the philosophic fundamentals of this art tradition, which were formulated by the 2nd century BCE. Today, he takes us to another realm where the art flourished in the midst of a very prosperous and sophisticated culture in the Eastern Deccan. Ladies and gentlemen, Benoy K Behl speaks to us today on the profusion of life, the great stupas of Amravati and Nagarjunakonda. Over to Professor Behl now, and thank you for your attention.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My apologies for the unkempt appearance. Actually, both Sujata Chatterji and I took ill with a virus and fever. In fact, that is why we were not able to take our flights tomorrow morning to go to Thailand to be with the delegation of accompanying the Lord Buddha's relics to Thailand. In 1996, as Sujata mentioned, I was commissioned to create an exhibition on the Buddhist heritage of India, which was sent along with the relics of the Buddha when they were sent to Thailand. And that became quite a landmark because that became the foundation of my many later exhibitions on the Buddhist heritage of India and on the Buddhist heritage of the world. In fact, these exhibitions were shown at hundreds of institutions in 27 countries around the world. And it became the beginning of a glorious journey. And what a beautiful journey to go to so many places associated with Lord Buddha, with the heritage of Buddhism, and to put it together to create an exhibition called The Path of Compassion. In fact, that is also the name of my book on the subject of the Buddhist heritage of the world, which the government of India are very kindly distributing in Thailand just now. Now, in the past few months, we had the joy of looking at the roots of this very ancient tradition of art. We saw it based in its earliest times in a culture which is remarkable, where archaeologists have not been able to find any evidence at all of police or army. A very unusual happening in the entire history of the world. We saw then the development of the philosophic basis of Indian art. We saw the challenges which Indian art posed itself to take us away from the illusions of the material world to that which is beyond, that which is more lasting, that which may be eternal. And we saw the creation of yakshas and yakshis, personifications of the profusion of the natural order. The natural order, which is, after all, finally only an illusion. And yet, it has this power over us so completely that we are not able to escape it. Therefore, we do not choose to hide from the fact of this great profusion of the natural order, the forces which create the profusion of life. But we acknowledge them. We acknowledge them, we bow our hands before them, and then we move forward. We also saw how in the beginning of the first millennium, great rock-cut caves had been hewn out of the mountains of the Western Ghats to create the grandest, marvelous places of worship, places which we entered, leaving behind the cares of the world around us, in the silence deep inside the mountain where we meditated. Now, in the meantime, the Deccan and the eastern part of the Deccan was developing another great, very prosperous trading culture. In fact, India has been one of the very earliest of places to grow cotton. And this led to a profusion of textiles which were created, beautiful textiles. In fact, Rome used to complain of their coffers being emptied for buying too many fine textiles from India. And we see in the art a great, very, very sophisticated, urban, and very urbane culture had developed, a very sophisticated culture. And we see that reflected in the art. And so, from the world of the solitude of meditation, from the world of the yakshas and yakshis and losing ourselves in meditation, we find that in the Eastern Deccan, we are entering into this is the region of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. We're entering into another realm, a realm of a very sophisticated development of culture. Uh, Places where there are Roman colonies who have come all the way from Europe and settled there. There's much trading going on. And in this very prosperous trading community, there is the development of great ideas and a sharing of great ideas. And that is what is reflected in the more than 140 ancient Buddhist sites found in the Andhra region. My many thanks to India Habitat Center for this yet one more opportunity to share another beautiful chapter of India's rich history with all of you. My thanks again to Doordarshan for having sponsored the making of such serious films. Who would imagine that a TV organization would spend time, effort, and money to sponsor the making of such deeply researched and extremely serious films working on the frontiers of knowledge? But that is what Doordarshan has done over the years, and my many thanks are owed to them. My many thanks to Sujata Chatterji for being a great support in all that I do. And my thanks to Sushant for dedicatedly doing marvelous screenings each time. And Sushant, I would request you now to please show the film.
In the first 2 centuries AD, great caves were hewn out of the mountains in the Western Deccan. Enlightenment, the great truth beyond the world of forms, was the focus of meditation. The creative forces and the joy of life in the world were represented in divine yakshas and yakshis. These were filled with a sense of well-being and the fullness of life. In central India by the 1st century, the Toranas or the gateways of Sanchi were completed. The enlightenment of the Buddha and the path of Dharma were represented by symbols which were universal to all religious streams in India. Yakshas, Yakshis, and the deity Lakshmi were presented in the art. In the plains of the Ganga and in Gandhara, in the first 2 centuries AD, images had come into being of the Buddha, Jaina Tirthankaras, and of Hindu deities. The fertile valley of the Krishna River was the cradle of civilization in the Eastern Deccan. By this time it had become famous in the world for its fine textiles, particularly of cotton. There was a flourishing trade with Rome, and large quantities of Roman coins have been found here. This area became one of the greatest centers of Buddhism, and over 140 early Buddhist sites have been listed in this region. The Buddhist site of Amravati is on the bank of the river Krishna, next to the ancient capital of Dharnikota in the present-day state of Andhra Pradesh. The history of the stupas at this site covers at least 1400 years, from the time of Emperor Ashok in the 3rd century BC. By the 1st century BC, the stupa was enlarged and sculpted limestone slabs with narrative sculptures were added. This drum slab shows the Buddha's enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. The footsteps and the parasols indicate his presence. The shallow relief, broad faces, turbans, and heavy earrings are reminiscent of other Shunga period art. In the 2nd century AD, the Satavahanas extended their rule to the Eastern Deccan. Under them, the sculptural reliefs of the magnificent stupa reached its culminating phase. The entire stupa was covered with shimmering limestone slabs, with exquisite sculpture. An ornate stone Vedika was also added. Today, only a mound remains of the Mahastupa or Great Stupa, as it is called in inscriptions. In its time, its glory was known throughout the Buddhist world. Fortunately, we have an idea of what the stupa looked like from depictions of it in the sculptural reliefs. This self-imaging of the monument is a tradition which continues from here onwards in Indian architecture. The Mahastupa was 162 feet in diameter. The railings were richly sculpted. Their pillars, about 10 feet high, had full-blown lotuses in the center and half-lotuses on the top and the bottom. The lotus, which rises in beauty from murky waters, is a pan-Indian symbol of purity and transcendence. On the inner surface of the pillars were made narrative carvings of the life of the Buddha. The stories are told in greater detail here than was done earlier at Sanchi. From the 1st century AD onwards, artists in North India, around Mathura, and in the northwestern Gandhara region had begun to depict deities in human form. Earlier, symbols had been used to indicate the presence of Buddhas and Jaina Tirthankaras. Artists in the Western and in the Eastern Deccan took more time to break away from earlier conventions of the art, in which personalities had not been depicted. It is only in the 2nd century that the Buddha was depicted in art in the Deccan. This pillar narrative depicts the great departure. Prince Siddhartha rides out of his palace to renounce his worldly life. Below is the first sermon of the Buddha. The artist prefers to use the symbol of the chakra to depict the Buddha after his enlightenment. The coping of the railing is fully adorned with eternal themes. Often, a thick and luxuriant garland is depicted. It is reminiscent of the vine of the fullness and bounty of nature, which was seen in the 2nd century BC at Bharhut and later at Sanchi. It is carried by turbaned youths who would represent the urbane city dwellers of the prosperous Krishna Valley. On entering the hallowed enclosure to circumambulate the great Stupa, the worshipper saw exquisite carvings on both sides of him. On his right, the drum of the sacred Stupa had slabs that were about 6 feet high. Sculpted dome slabs rose another 11.5 feet above the drum. A world of Buddhist narratives was created, through which the worshipper moved as he went around the holy stupa. Sculpted scenes such as the birth of the Buddha would transport the viewer far from the everyday concerns of the mundane world. His soul would be lifted in response to the beauty and grace before him. In the rapt attention and divine contemplation on the faces of the attendant figures, the artists appear to have portrayed the devotion within themselves. It is a realm of gentleness and beauty which awakens the best within us. The Chitra Sutra, the ancient treatise on art making, states that the purpose of art is to transform us through the presentation of harmony and grace, to show us a glimpse of the eternal which underlies all of creation. The reliefs of the 2nd century at Amravati are deeply cut, which gives them the appearance of being fully in the round. The depth of the cutting permits the overlapping of figures on 2 and even 3 planes. Each figure is individual and possessed of life and movement of his own. The variety of poses is infinite. The artists are confident and appear to discover new possibilities of the depiction of the human form. there is a vitality and rhythm in the closely grouped compositions. Activity is contained within a sense of grace which prevails on all forms. The figures portray a quality of surrender to the harmony of existence. The sumptuous richness of the carvings is a fulsome celebration of the divinity which is all around us. Since the Indus Valley civilization, India has been well known for its flourishing trade. Great centers of art have come up at junctions on internal and external trade routes. Greeks, Parthians, and others who stayed in India took to Indic beliefs and expressed their devotion to deities in numerous inscriptions. Commerce brought people from faraway parts of India and elsewhere together in a spirit of mutual understanding and appreciation. It is such a spirit of warmth and giving which is contained in donative inscriptions of this period across the whole of India. Here too, in the Krishna Valley, donations of sculptures were made for the benefit of all sentient beings of the world. The exquisite phase of the Amravati art was under the rule of the Satvahana rulers. They were devoted to Hindu deities and were fully benevolent to the Buddhist Sangha. However, as in central and western India, this was an art of the people. The individual pillars and sculptures were the donations of lay people and the monastic community. Nuns outnumber monks in the donative inscriptions, and many of them hold high religious titles. Everywhere in ancient Indian inscriptions, it is seen that women enjoyed a high economic and social status.
So what emerges from a study of the inscriptions is an understanding of the social fabric of ancient India and the wide range of people who contributed to the monument. And what becomes apparent is that women played an especially important role. In fact, the women folk of the royal court were often the chief patrons of Buddhism.
Besides the Buddha figures in the reliefs, a number of freestanding Buddhas have been found at Amravati and other sites of the Andhra region. They date from the 3rd century onwards. These are quite different from the Buddha figures which were being made at Mathura and Gandhara and show an independent artistic conception. They are dignified and serene. These were to be the models for the Buddhas of Southeast Asia. While the glorious Mahastupa at Amravati was made and sculpted in different stages, from the 1st century BC till the 3rd century AD, many other stupas were made in the Krishna River valley. Their railings and drum slabs are a vast surviving corpus of the early art of Buddhism. In the 3rd century, the power of the Satvahanas began to fade. However, the tradition of art which had blossomed under them continued. The Ikshvakus came to power in the 2nd quarter of the 3rd century and established a new capital called Vijayapura, or the City of Victory, in the Nagarjunakonda valley. The great Buddhist teacher, Nagarjuna, one of the most important proponents of Mahayana philosophy, was known to have lived here in the 1st or 2nd century AD. The area continued as a most important center for the development of Buddhist philosophy under the Ikshvakus. A large number of monastic establishments were founded here for the residence, study, and worship of at least 4 different sects of Buddhists. Unlike Amravati, the remains at Nagarjunakonda have been systematically excavated and securely dated through inscriptions to the 3rd and 4th centuries. The original site was submerged by the making of a dam in recent years. However, the edifices were carefully reconstructed and preserved for the future. In the Indic tradition, theology was never confined by dogmatic beliefs. Early literature is full of accounts of public intellectual discussions between the teachers of different sects. This climate in which different sects and philosophies coexisted is seen in the remains at Nagarjunakonda. Chaityagrihas with stupas are made next to shrines with statues of the Buddha. Worshippers of both share a common vihara or monastic residence. The style of the sculpture here is very similar to the last phase at Amravati. The figures are lively and full of movement. They are cut deep into the stone. The tradition is continued here of the depiction of the stupa on sculptural slabs of the monument. The Gandharvas, who bring offerings, are a constant motif in Indic art from the 2nd century BC. Queen Maya gave birth to the Buddha while standing under a sal tree. The artist depicts her in the continuing style of the Shalabhanjika, who presents the flowering abundance of nature. Her name, Maya, means the illusory nature of the world of forms around us. It is there as a reminder to the devotee. The great departure of Prince Siddhartha is depicted. Divine beings hold up the hooves of his horse Kantaka so that he may ride out of the palace silently. The creative force of nature is expressed in yakshis, whose mere touch causes the trees to blossom. These continue as a theme from the earliest stupa railings of Bharhut. From the rock-cut Chaityagrihas of Karle, from the 1st century AD onwards, yakshas and yakshis are also seen together. In their affection and togetherness, they represent the harmony and completeness of the natural order. A number of Hindu temples were also made at Nagarjunakonda during the period. However, none have survived. The belief is in the oneness of the whole of creation. The sculptures were made, as donative inscriptions proclaim, for the benefit of all sentient beings. The artist continues to present before us the grace which underlies all that is around us. That grace, which is also deep within each of us, and we respond to it when it is presented before us in art. Earlier, the art brought to us the vital and living world of nature, in which man was only one part of its existence. The focus has shifted. Some of the joy and frolicsome world of creation has been left behind, as the emphasis has come more on men and women.
I would like to read the fact that the beginning of the first millennium saw the Eastern Deccan and, in fact, also the Western Deccan as some of the most prosperous places in the entire world. There was an immense amount of trade, and we see the depiction of a very highly developed urban culture. We find a sophistication of thought, a sophistication of art, a sophistication of lifestyle, which is remarkable, especially for such an early period of time. And in this, we see the continuing challenges faced by the tradition of Indian art. Remember always that tradition which wishes to take us away from the material world, away from, in fact, even the sophistication of the material world, to that which is profound and deep and beyond it all, to that which is still, to that which is eternal. And yet we live in this world. And so the depiction of the world that we are living in, the world of men and women, has become much more in this period of time in the Eastern Deccan, as you saw. And yet, with all the activity of life of this very sophisticated and prosperous culture, yet simultaneously, there is a sense of grace which is seen pervading all the activity. There is all the activity, there is so much happening, and yet there is a sense of grace which constantly takes us beyond, which constantly takes us to that which is still and that which is within us. And I would be happy to answer questions which Sujata is requested to please read out from the chat box for me. Thank you.
Before I start with the questions, I'll quickly like to tell you about our next screening. This would be on a Saturday once again at 6 p.m. and the date would be 23rd of March. And the film is called Masterpieces of the Deccan. It is about sublime grace which serves to transform us. So do please mark the date, and we'd love for all of you to be with us. Thank you. Krishna River, lively and beautifully sculpted with expressive artistic style within available natural resources. Love the presentation.
Thank you so much, Krishna. Very kind of you to say that.
Cheng Sochiat, so beautiful and so precious.
Thank you so much. It's very, very kind of you. It's a very kind voice I hear from far away, and thank you so much for your appreciation.
Rakesh Aga, is it possible to access the earlier talks?
Yes, indeed. There is my YouTube channel called Benoy Behl. So if you were to go to that, you will be able to access many of the previous events. And yes, you would be able to trace the routes as we have been going through the development of the routes. Thank you.
I've just put that up for your convenience in case anybody wants to access the earlier talks, the YouTube channel, Benoy Behl. Maybe you'd like to share with them about the upcoming course at India Habitat Center?
Yes. Over the past year or so, there has been a lot of demand that I start giving the in-person talks comprising a course of Indian art, history and appreciation, which I used to give at India Habitat Center. So the good news is that I have agreed, and on the 6th and 7th of April, Saturday and Sunday, for a total of 12 hours, this course, Indian Art, History and Appreciation, is going to be given again. And you can please watch the space of the India Habitat Center program for more details about it. Thank you.
Rakesh Aga, thank you. Beautiful presentation.
Thank you so much. Very kind of you.
That's about it. There don't seem to be any more questions. Oops, there's one coming up. Just give me a second. Yes. This is Ravi Shankar saying, how long did it take for the sculptures to be finished, given the scale and beautiful depictions?
It's quite amazing to see actually whether it was the paintings at Ajanta or these very fine sculptures. They are done very readily. They are done very gracefully, and it's not bit by bit. There is a sense of grace with which the lines come about. And of course, it would have taken a very long time to create the many thousands of stupas, and there are so many sculpted railings and so much sculpture. In fact, one of the amazing things is that despite all the activity of life, despite all the trading activity and so many other activities in life, people were very preoccupied with the making of art and the sharing of art to do with the divine, to do with the eternal. So their thoughts were always beyond it all. Thank you. Well, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you all so much for being with us. And once again, my thanks to Sushant for a great screening, and again to India Habitat Center for yet another wonderful opportunity to share so much art. And thank you so much, Sujata Chatterji.